How's everybody doing? This is our first class for mobile application programming. I want to cover class structure, what the general idea is for the classes, uh, and also how grading works, and the exemptions for that. I know this is a different time, so uh, the idea here is that we learn about mobile app programming, and it's informative. We have a good time learning about it, and if the scenario is such that you can't participate, you've all participated such far, so there's going to be ways to have exemptions for grading too. So the class structure will be I'll post a video once a week um, on these topics, review in Android Studio, etc., etc. We'll talk more about that. The video will have links to different stuff for you to check out, a general overview of whatever the topic is, and activities like posting in the discussion boards. Um, there'll be an exam and a final exam based on that material. So just based on everything since break as new material this schedule. Everything before break we get an A on. So we get full credit for what we did. Okay. And we post, or I'm sorry, I post videos every week. And you guys check the stuff out. And if you're in a scenario where you can't have access, for some reason you get sick, something happens, there's a grade exemption um, example that'll be here too. Or excuse me, homework piece that'll be here also. And the idea with the grade exemption is that if you come into a situation where you can't take the test, you just fill this out. You say I'd like to be exempt, and you'll get an A for the course. So, I don't know if anybody will be in situations where they're sick or they need to take care of people, whatever. And I don't want you to be stressed out about the course. You've all done good work so far. So, um, that is how we can take care of that. Okay? So, we're going to review Android Studio this week. Then we're going to look at Flutter. Then I'll post an exam. Exams will be the same way as every other exam has been, multiple choice, true, false online with multiple attempts. Um, React Native, we'll review that also, and then I'm going to look at other mobile app frameworks I can think of that are used to try to make sure we're rounding that out, and then we'll have a final exam that'll be online, multiple choice, true, false also. So everything you did in class, you got an A on. Congratulations, great job. Uh, and then we have this exam and the final exam that we can take, or again, if we have issues, we do the grade exemption form. Okay, so that's the idea. I post stuff every week. You can check it out. Um, and that's how the gradings work. This is again low stress, made to be informative. Try to give you a synopsis of everything that we learned in mobile app and anything that I missed, um, and give you some opportunities to participate. I'll be available via Zoom or Teams or Discord or whatever you want to do. I got any option you want, I'm fine with. And we can set things up to look at issues that you have in looking at these, but you don't have any final project to do. You already got an A for that. All right. So the idea is to check this stuff out and try to make sure you're familiar with using all the frameworks and tools, because uh, mobile applications in a lot of cases are done by third parties, people like me, because there isn't a lot of development staff that are on site already for these companies to do this stuff in some cases. So you hire a third party, uh, and that can work out pretty good. But you could be a well-rounded IT developer, and I think that's what the future is going to bring. A lot more people that are expected to be jacks of all trades and do these things yourself, or you can get into development. There's a lot of potential with development, right? Lots of money you can make doing things with development, um, and a lot of things to explore, right? Even with the current pandemic, excuse me, there's a lot of opportunities that people are looking at. There's a lot of stuff going on with apps related to this. So there's all kinds of interesting developments in that space even too. So the important part here is that mobile applications are tied to everyone's everyday life, really, right? In terms of payments, if we look at mobile in China versus US in terms of large markets, right? Uh, there's a lot of transactions happening, a lot of large transactions happening. The market's increasing quicker every year to be a lot larger, and mobile devices are moving in China a lot faster than PCs did. There was this gradual thing that happened in the US in the 80s and 90s where there was more and more adoption of devices, and it was in a different way than what is happening now in China, where people just pick up mobile devices and use it for like everything. So the idea here is there's lots of opportunity in this space, both for helping with healthcare, education, mental health, physical health, all kinds of stuff like that, and business itself. All right. So understand these frameworks, things like Flutter and React Native, can make it super easy to develop these applications. I've put together things like Bluetooth enabled applications, um, example prototypes in a couple of hours for clients or potential clients, or just for ideas. Okay, you come up with an idea for an app, you know that you can get either an Android developer license for $25, the Apple developer program, I believe, is still $99. Let's see. They probably have an education discount kind of thing too. I don't know if this shows a cost or if they'll make you log in. Let's try this one. And let's just do this. $99. Enterprise $399 to have access to number of people Apple App Store. $99 a year, 500 million. That's a nice built-in platform for selling your application. Android developer cost range from free to Google Play is a one-time fee of $25. So I think, if I remember correctly, that's still currently what goes on. So um, you can use that $25 Android developer program to post Android apps, $99 for Apple. We're not talking about large amounts of money, right? So if you have an app idea, you can make tons of money. You have a lot of potential there. If you have a idea for helping somebody in terms of health services, you could help lots of people for really cheap. So that's the importance of mobile applications. It's a reason why they're so popular right now, right? Why that install base happens so fast in China, because of their ease of use. A lot better than carrying around cash, also, right? So the general class structure we've got over. We've got a general idea of what we're heading into. So the things I want to cover for tonight. Basics, or excuse me, for this video. Basics of Android Studio, the GeoQuiz project that we looked at previously, um, and some stuff about the Android lifecycle. Some of the basics about Android and Java. We looked at doing development using Android and Java, and also Flutter and React Native, right? So I just figured I'd pick this one to start the review in out of the options. Um, One reason is is that the Android the Android code itself, there's a lot more of it, right? Flutter is newer. Flutter was developed at the end of 2018, December 2018. Um, Android apps, I have Android apps that I've done that are 7 or 8 years old. So um, there's a lot more code out there, a lot more potential you'd have to maintain code out there also. So our Android Studio Java piece revolved around Android Studio itself, and then GeoQuiz, right? And we had in GitHub um, a GeoQuiz example that I had posted. I think under announcements. So the idea here, of course, is you have a machine that has Android Studio and GitHub on it, right? So Android Studio, I can download Android Studio for free. I have to add the plugins for Flutter and Dart, but Android Studio and Java are just built in, right? We go to, I think this is download.android.com, and we can download Android Studio, which is based on JetBrains Java initial Java IDE IntelliJ. Um, Also, just to remember, the JetBrains Toolbox, super cool application. Uh, we can use this to manage the install for Android Studio. I'm not sure if we have it. Yeah. So this shows whatever is installed. I have Android Studio installed on here, so I'm not sure why it wants to show it as something separate to install. But PyCharm, WebStorm, all these are available to you as a student, so make sure to check them out. Um, there's a lot of applications that a lot of developers use. All the JetBrains stuff works in a similar fashion and works relatively good. So I shouldn't say that. It works really well. I can't really say that there's any problems with it. It's fast. It's free for you to use. It's free for educational purposes, right? Um, and all their stuff works well and runs fast. So let's check out our GeoQuiz example to explore Android Studio some more. So I went and grabbed this link. This is the one I want, and then I'm going to go to my GitHub desktop. That was the other part I had to install, right? That's at desktop.github.com. And this, I can't emphasize how much GitHub desktop is important, right? Um, I had a couple days ago, I have an ROG Strix laptop. Let me see if I can find one that's like it. Yeah, it's pretty close to this one. Somewhere in the range of this one. Um, it's probably a year and a half old. And last week, it just died. There's never been an issue with this laptop. I've used it, like when I was doing esports stuff, I carried it all over the place. Um, I've used it for Unity, Visual Studio, Android Studio, VR, Destiny, Destiny 2, whatever, everything. Um, and all of a sudden it just dies. And me, I tore it apart. Could not get the thing to take power and boot. It would see a battery, see if the battery was removed. Took out um, hard drives, fans, right? Everything, cleaned everything, reassembled everything several times. Went through all the gyrations. Um, just totally dead. I mean, hey, I can take it's M.2 and regular SSD drive. I take the drives out of them and get all the data off of it. But I didn't even have to do that because everything I have is backed up to GitHub. So I just go to another machine. I open up GitHub Desktop, and everything's there. So between that and using um, Google G Suite stuff for all my to-do lists and data. I haven't even bothered with getting data off of it. There's no data on there that is that I don't have somewhere else, and that's the importance of using these tools that are free. Because like I've got probably 5 or 6 different projects with different clients that I'm working on at any given time, and um, if all of them go haywire and I lose data, we're talking healthcare people that can't get updates to their application that they need for regulatory purposes or whatever, those kind of things. So I can't really mess around, and it's not like I have to do anything hard. I go to GitHub Desktop. I want to clone a repository, right? So that's what I did. My laptop, I checked in the latest changes to that repository that I was working with, and then I just cloned on another machine. I'm doing the same thing here for the GeoQuiz example for us to look at it, right? So again, I don't even have to really prep this machine. Once I have the IDEs and GitHub Desktop on there, as long as my internet connection doesn't go down, which, you know, um, I can open things up, grab them from the GitHub Desktop, and I'm cool. So it's important to get into that vein and not mess around. So, anyways, all my yapping. The whole point was this GitHub link right here is linked from the announcements. That's our GeoQuiz example. That's our thing, one of our things to look at for this week. I copied that link. I think I can get it right from here also, but I always use GitHub Desktop. Um, Even if I have an IDE that supports it another way, and because that way I don't have to worry about different plugins doing different weird stuff. I just worry about GitHub Desktop working, right? And then I also don't have to worry about installing IDEs all the time for everything. I can grab the code um, if it's and then I can worry about the IDE afterwards. Anyways, so I paste that URL and I went to File and Clone Repository. I paste that URL. I clone my repository. I go to Repository and then Show in Explorer. Here's my GeoQuiz example. And then, oops, let me close and reopen Android Studio. And we'll check out GeoQuiz as kind of a review also of Android Studio too. So I'm going to open an existing project and paste that GeoQuiz example in. I can see there's my GeoQuiz folder itself with this app folder that's underneath it. So this is what I should see. Sometimes there'll be a problem where we don't open the right folder, like we go like a folder too high. So I want to make sure we open the right one. Alright, so Android Studio is opening up. And a lot of times we'll see updates in this. I love that they do this kind of stuff. It's really super cool what you can get nowadays for IDEs, and in terms of what's built in. Uh, like for instance, if you look at the bottom here, it's syncing the right version of Gradle based on what my project said. I don't have to worry about doing that by hand. It automatically does it for me. And this is in the free version, you know. Android Studio again is based on IntelliJ, um, and looks like a lot of other JetBrains products. There's this project palette that is like the Solution Explorer in Visual Studio, and there's build output windows and that kind of stuff at the bottom. Here's our main workspace when we open something up, um, and we'll have our details, our properties bars over here on the right. So let's download the latest version of Gradle, and running a build and trying to get the build running. So that's kind of like the basics of the user interface, right? And then all these menus, I know there's tons of stuff here, but I do really suggest that you go through and learn what all these mean. Um, they're all there for a reason. I know it takes a lot of time to do it, but that's how I really learn a lot about these applications. Like, even if you read textbooks about them, they don't go through all of it, and it's not the same as the experience of actually going here. And plus, you learn like how cool these applications are. Like, uh, you can search here for different keywords, and it shows you results in parts of the settings. This is super cool because there's like old settings screens never had stuff like this. So a lot of times you had to memorize where stuff was at. Not really like necessary to do it, but for general speed purposes, right? Like being able to run through IDEs and change things and customize them quickly is very important to be efficient in any kind of development. And there's so many settings that modern IDEs have that it would take quite some time to learn them all by hand and memorize them. So, and they change, right, as the IDs update. So instead of having to do that, you can use a lot of these keyword searches, right? So you get the best of both worlds. You have these settings that you can look through and learn about. As you're looking through the settings, um, you learn more about programming and what is possible in how the IDEs work, okay, and more features and functionality that are available in Android itself. Um, you can customize how the editor itself works, how everything looks in the editor, sizes of everything, that kind of stuff. Important stuff to check out. Again, looking through every single thing would take forever, but at least looking through it somewhat to understand how it works, trying to find some things that you might want to customize, um, and major features of it. Like this is a good example. So we're um, under the settings option in Android Studio, but we basically have this awesome plugin manager that's part of it. Like we use this when we add Flutter and Dart anyway, so we've seen this before. But this is like an application in its own. You can manage any current updates or updates for plugins that you currently have. So things like Firebase, where you can store database data, do authentication through that kind of stuff, not have to manage your own database server. That's what Firebase would be used for, right? We've talked about this, I think, before, but let's take a look. Firebase is one of the services that's built into Android Studio. You can make projects in Firebase, manage the data that's in those projects right here through the web. So I can make a database, I can store data in that database, etc., etc. Um, right here within Firebase, kind of like using AWS for data storage. Um, that plugin wants an update, so we'll do that later though. But tools like external tools for doing editing of different stuff. So if I want something to be opening in Photoshop for editing images, that kind of things, I can do that. So anyways, playing around with the IDE really is a big deal. It's free in terms of you don't need any special training to do it, and you'll find all kinds of stuff in there that will hopefully pique your interest in learning more about programming too. So in Android Studio, we have our GeoQuiz application. In our project palette, we can switch it to the project view, project files view. This is kind of like just all the files that are physically there. That Android view, this is a good one I usually like to look at too because two reasons. One, um, This makes sure that the project is actually building correctly. So if the Android palette looks correct and there's no red errors, the project is building. That's good. Um, and also, I can easily look at the major sections, right? So we've got our actual Java code, our activities, and we'll talk about the activity lifecycle and that kind of thing in more detail. Um, and then we've got our manifest. This is like the main configuration file for our Android application, right? And then under our res folder, we have our resources, right? And layouts. These are the screens for our application. There's our main activity. Our quiz activity. So this Android view is a nice simplified view of what our project looks like. Okay. Um, Understanding this, getting comfortable moving through here, and this folder structure is important. Any other project that you'd find online that's done in Java and Android Studio is going to look like this. So they're all similar. That's a benefit to you. Okay. Once you learn how one works, then they all pretty much work the same way. So GeoQuiz itself, if we remember correctly, has um, a little bit of code, nothing too complicated. We set up questions. We have an array of questions, right? Um, we don't do anything sophisticated with data objects other than having a definition of a question itself. That's in a question class. That's the one part that we have that isn't an actual Android activity. It's just a simple class itself. And then we have the quiz activity itself. Um, Activities, remember, are an important part of understanding Android Studio, right? And let's see here. I think this is our slide set that references. An activity is one class, one typically screen as part of the application. Okay, and as the application is built and run, you usually have some main activity that starts the app. Then you click on a settings menu. That settings menu is another activity on top of it. And then maybe you click on the fonts and colors settings menu. That's another one on top of it. So then you have a stack of 3 activities. You could hit the back button on the fonts and colors, and then you're on the settings activity, and then hit the back button again, and you're back on the main activity, right? All that processing is done by Android itself, and this is an example of one activity. It extends app compat activity. That's a base activity that allows for compatibility between different versions of Android. So when Android development started, um, instead of importing app compat activity like when I first did it, when it was Android like 2.0, we just extended activity. But in Android, I think 4.0, um, they made this app compat activity that takes the basic Android app activity, the one that it started with, and supports new features from like Android 4.0 on, but still supports the old versions of Android. Um, and let me show you why that is. Why do we worry about old versions of Android? So this looks about right. So this is a Bluebird Pidian BIP 6000. So this is what's called a rugged handheld device. And there's rugged computers, right? There's Panasonic Toughbooks. That's a popular example. These devices are made to be beat up and still working. So I have a client that works in oil fields, uses these devices, has used these devices for like 8 years. So they have Android 2.3 on them. The firmware for those devices, I do not believe, will support a newer version of Android. So they might run these devices for, I mean, there's not going to be really a much better version and need for collecting much more data than what they collect. So they could run them for another 10 years. There's really no reason to replace them. You might say, well, why not get something new, but there's no reason. This one that I'm showing in this picture is in worse shape than almost any of the ones that we have. We have 20 of them that are 8 years old. Whoever had this one just didn't put a screen protector on it, didn't take good care of it. They let it get beat up. Um, and this is one of the parts that you should learn it in college. And the basis of this is understanding systems and processes and when things need to be replaced and when they don't. It's tough sometimes to understand that. If money is unlimited, then you replace everything, right? Like, I would love to play SimCity with cheat codes, because I could add enough money to the budget that I could have whatever I wanted forever. But in the real world, usually it doesn't work that way, right? So this is being sold on eBay. It's probably going to be purchased by some company that's going to keep using these. And probably 5 or 10 years from now, there'll still be transactions on eBay for people selling this kind of older hardware. I've made a lot of money, and there's a lot of people making a lot of money supporting older pieces. So that's a lot reason why the importance of talking about this Android stuff, anyways, right? Like, today, I'm probably not going to use Android Studio with Java to develop new applications, but I might use it um, to support old ones, figure out how they work, manage them, make changes to them, that kind of thing. So we have the activity, which is the Java code, and then we've got the layout, which is the screens, right? Um, those two pieces combined together, uh, the layout being the XML definition of what parts are on the screen, and the Java code being the controller of that. In the MVC setting, a model view controller setting, question would be our model, right? Our data model. Question has resource ID and whether it's true or not. Resource ID, if we remember correctly, maps to a specific string name for that question. That's like our data source. So that's our model. Our view is the XML, and then the controller is the activity in the middle. Okay. So those are those pieces, and then the manifest is the configuration file. This has all the different intents um, for the activities, meaning this quiz activity is one, main activity is another. And quiz activity, I want that to be the one that starts the application. That's where this main action comes in. And then I want this one to be the one that is shown in the launcher as an icon. So uh, that is kind of the basics of Android Studio. So what I'm thinking, based on our schedule, we got it to the point where we can open things up and play around in Android Studio. So that's what I want you to do in the discussion board. There is a new forum for examples of Android, Java, and Kotlin. So find some stuff, post it in there, um, and I'll participate, as students participate. Um, but again, not for grade, just for playing around with the stuff. So again, let me know if you have any questions about anything. But check those pieces out, and next time we will check out Flutter and how to set that up, and Dart, of course, as part of that, and post the exam. All right. So we will see you guys later. Also, this album, I don't know why I'm pointing at the screen, but Jay Electronica, a written testimony. Okay, this guy, Jay Electronica, you may have heard of him. This has nothing really to do with um, anything in class, but for 10 years, rap fans have been looking, waiting, anticipating. This gentleman's debut album is finally out. Okay, it's been overshadowed, unfortunately, by everything else going on, but it's very good. All right, so again, that's nothing to do with class, but it's really cool. I want you to check it out. I put the title of this artist in the album here in a large font for it to make it very easy for you to see this. Go to YouTube, play this, do your homework. It's gonna work out very good for you. All right, thanks. So I'm sure you're wondering like what I've been doing during this extended break. One of the things I've been doing is hanging out with my son Emmett and playing Roblox. And I wanted to show you guys. This is my Roblox character. I have multiple Roblox characters. So this is just one I got a lot, but this is my favorite. I want you guys to check out my hair, how awesome it looks. I just want you to get a shot of that. Me and my son have a lot of fun with Roblox. We like to hang out in trucks and smash trucks and other trucks and cars and other vehicles and that kind of thing. He's got this styling hat situation going on, which is pretty cool, but it is not anything like this. I don't know if you know, but that hair is amazing. I want you to remember me like this.